Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. It is Tuesday evening, September 14th. I have 7:01 p.m. And this is a regular meeting of council for the Village of Lions Bay. I am in chambers, Mayor McLaughlin, along with CAO DeJong, CFO Rook, and Municipal Coordinator Duarte. And council members are online. I see we have members of the gallery. Council has come back from the closed session, which has been paused, and there's nothing to report out at this time. In advance of our going any further, council will be going back into closed at the end of the meeting. It will be a very lengthy closed session. And I will be accelerating as much as we can through the current agenda, nothing to be left out, nothing to be lost, and no full discussion missed. That being said, some of the topics that are on our agenda, I'm going to project simply can't be done and us accomplish it within the time that we would like, which would see the meeting closed and concluded by 10 o'clock. So I will keep the council members apprised of where we are on that. And it will likely come to a point where we may table some discussions or not table the discussion or table the topic, or push the topic maybe by itself or in combination with another into an evening council strategy session in the near future. Here we go. So welcome this evening, and I'll put forward the motion to adopt the agenda. Can I have a second? Councillor Abbott.
I just put up my hand just as a comment to what you just said, Ron. If we do get to the point that we want to push things, can we keep an eye on the clock and make sure we get the discussion on the base mod initiatives? Because
it's on my mind, Councillor Abbott. We're not going to miss the legislative issues that we need to deal with. Just a second. Oh. Good, thank you. So thank you very much, Councillor Abbott. Any changes? I think I've got a second on that. Let's just confirm. Can I have a second for Councillor Barmere?
That's a second and changes.
Thank you. All right, so I think the only addition to the agenda is CAO DeJong's report, which has been received electronically by council, and Municipal Coordinator Duarte tells me that it's available to the public, and that is his report on item 9.8, which is the Vancouver urban containment boundary. So there's a report there that was not in the initial package. There be no other changes unless the council has any?
No, I want to add under committees, Climate Action Committee verbal update.
Okay, we'll make you item number D3, Councillor Carmier.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. All those in favor of the agenda as presented, please confirm by saying yes. Those opposed, no.
Aye.
Yes. Aye.
Thank you very much. Carried. We are now at item number 5 on the posted agenda, and that's public participation. And those who are considering coming, you have 2 minutes on the topic, and we will accept up to a maximum of 5 speakers to a limit of 10 minutes. If one of the folks from the gallery who'd like to participate would like to come forward, please unmute and you'll have the floor for 2 minutes. Okay. Nobody coming forward? Don't wait another second. There being none, thank you to the gallery for being with us this evening. The next piece is review and approval of the minutes of the prior meeting. And that would be the last meeting being July the 27th. And I'll put forward a motion that the regular council meeting minutes of July the 27th be approved as circulated. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you. Any discussion, changes, additions, omissions? Councillors, I have none. Councillor Abbott and then Councillor Cunliffe.
Page 13, halfway down the page, Councillor Abbott will send questions to P in the September 14th meeting, and an update will be provided by the CFO. There was a suggestion earlier in the meeting, and then, well, as we discussed this, we decided instead that there would be an updated version in this agenda package, which we would comment on, which is what's happened. So that was recorded inaccurately. You following me?
What would you like in substitution?
Strike it.
Instead
What's
of
right?
Councillor Abbott will send questions to P in the September 14th meeting, it should read, an updated version will appear in the September 14th meeting for comments. And that's what happened.
I concur. Thank you. Councillor, okay, we'll take
I have
that.
one
Any
more.
other? Please.
On page 14, down at the bottom, there was the last statement. It says, and this refers to the report that you just mentioned, that CO de Jong noted his workload and time required to prepare a report on this issue. CACs and DPAs will have to be put on hold. And then above that it says, request that staff bring back for discussion in September. Just to be clear, Council did not ask the CAO to do a report. Quite clearly in that discussion, we said we didn't need a report, but we wanted it coming back in September. And I personally went and listened to it again to confirm that. So I don't think that quite reads right. It reads as if Council directed the CAO to produce a report, and that's not what happened. So can we add in that Council request that staff bring that discussion in September, but did not ask for a report?
I think it's kind of a moot point, and whether or not a report was asked for, any discussion on the matter would need to entail all of the considerations that the discussion ought to entail. So, whether or not a report is produced to add to the discussion is neither here nor there. In terms of the minutes, there's no specific direction to the CAO not to bring a report. You can't add that to the minutes because it wasn't direct.
In fact, I think there was that we asked you not to spend your time putting a report together. We just wanted this topic to come back and not get buried to December strategy session. I think it was specifically asked to not produce a report.
And how do you discuss it?
I'm sorry, I don't recall that, but in any event,
Councillor Zappin,
it's been produced.
the reality is we have a report, and it's rather a moot point now. And where would you like to go with this?
Well, we can discuss it when we get there, but I do think for accuracy of the minutes, we should make the point that Council did not want the conversation to get lost. They didn't ask for a report. But if it's a moot point, you don't want to correct the minutes, we'll discuss it when we get to that section, I guess. I mean, the minutes should reflect what actually got said, whether it's a moot point or not. Anyway, long night, so if you're not correcting the minutes, let's just move on and we'll deal with it when we get there.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Councillor Abbott. Councillor Cunliffe, any other changes?
Yeah, just one point under the statement that Mr. Gansky had made. He had also indicated not only his concern about the UCB Metro wood burning bylaw, but did note that by remaining within the urban containment boundary, we are subject to other arbitrary bylaws that Metro may impose upon us. I think that needs to be put in there.
I have the page number.
That would be page 8 under 5A.
Thank you. Good. Thank you very much. So amended. Municipal coordinator, thank you.
Yeah, I'll give it back in this amendment.
Okay, thank you. Councilors, any other changes, amendments? Call a motion. Those in favor of the minutes as amended, please confirm by saying yes. Opposed, no.
Yes.
Yes.
Aye.
Carried. Good. Next one, and it's a special meeting of September the 8th. And that the special council meeting minutes of September 8th be approved as circulated. I'll put forward that motion. I have a second, but a hand. Thank you. Any discussion, changes, amendments?
No.
Call a motion. All those in favor of the minutes as please confirm by saying yes. Opposed, no.
Yes.
Good. Thank you. Carried. Item number 7, business arising from the minutes. I have one, but I'll let other council members go first. Councillor Bean.
Yeah, on page 13 of the first minutes there, I'm curious, there's a line here that says preliminary mid-year review. It's the first, second, third, fourth, fifth bullet point down. Staff responded to questions noting not charging for school parking area, do not have jurisdiction. School board does not have jurisdiction. Jurisdiction relates to public highways. Now, can you refresh my memory then? Is that the highways department that has jurisdiction over the school parking lot? That seems odd to me.
No, that would be that the village does not have the jurisdiction to enforce parking under its traffic and parking bylaw on private property, including school board property. And that actually the school board within the School Act does not have the jurisdiction to essentially assign its private property rights to the municipality to enforce under the municipality's traffic and bylaw system, which you cannot do. And then the note jurisdiction relates to public highways is our jurisdiction relates to our municipal roads or highways and road rights of way.
Oh, okay. I think I get it.
It could be clarified a little better.
Okay, thanks. Can I ask another question? On the next page, at the top of the page, it's got council requested that another meeting of the ESS and EOC volunteers be held in September to maintain momentum. Is there any report available of any contact with the volunteers since before we broke for our summer break? And what's the status of those volunteers, or do you know?
I believe that Mr. Whitney is in the process of attempting to organize something to in terms of setting up the temporary EOC when we engage in a CLAT process. So there's a bit of things that are trying to happen in sequence in terms of changes that we need to make for EOC preparation purposes, namely moving things from the CLAT to the boardroom downstairs and getting not only volunteers but staff up to speed on what our procedures are going to be for the next while that becomes the temporary EOC. So there's a few things happening in terms of going through a bit of a training and education process for both staff and volunteers that Robert is working on.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Abbott.
Yeah, we can stay on that section, Councillor Bain stole my thunder on two there, but the other thing it says in that section is Senator Young provided an overview of the report, noting the report on the evacuation planning program will be presented at the September 14th meeting. So we didn't see that tonight. Can we get an understanding when that would happen?
Yeah, what happened was that he's had to devote time and resources to moving forward the work that we need to do for the Fire Smart grant that we got through UBCM. There's a couple of components to that, and he's been working with Public Works Manager to try and get that arranged. And because we've got some deadlines to meet that had to be dealt with sooner rather than later, and that prevented him from going on to get back to the evacuation planning. So that'll have to be still to come.
Will it be at the next meeting, Peter, or?
I need to discuss specifics with Robert still to see exactly where we're at. I think we're almost to the stage of having things organized for the Fire Smart stuff. And so I want to go over with him what's next and where we're at. So I can't promise for sure that it will be October 5th, but we'll see what we can do in that respect.
He and I do have some more discussions to have on the Fire Smart before I can put forward that RFP.
Okay.
Okay, I think on behalf of council, I'd say that there's a strong interest that this comes forward, and we know you'll use your best efforts to make sure that does as quickly as possible.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Councillor Rapp, any other questions?
On that subject, can I go back up to page 11? Table of correspondence, the last point, the point about the berm. I'd forgot, I couldn't remember what this is about, so I went and reread the letter. When I reread the letter, there's two components to it. The one issue that's dealt with here is the difficulty and cost with getting water on the other side of the berm. But the other question that came out in that letter was getting either some leeway or some clarification on how you water the berm within our water restrictions, because it's not a lawn, so it doesn't fall into that category. And if it was a lawn, it hasn't got a street number. And in the zone, in the level 2 restrictions, the only way to water it would be by bucket or by hand. So I think if the works manager or someone can go back to them and work out some more reasonable rules without wasting water, that was probably one of the requests that doesn't seem to be dealt with.
Yeah, if I may, under level 2 and level 1, you can use drip irrigation, and that's what the cost was to install. So we've provided a cost for installing drip irrigation, and that wouldn't affect, that wouldn't come into effect under level 1 or level 2. Meaning you'd still be able to water under level 1 and level 2 restrictions, as long as you use drip irrigation.
Well, in level, there's a lot of confusion, and in the village update sometimes doesn't make it better. In level 1, the restrictions are about lawns. You can sprinkle your garden, so they could sprinkle it.
Correct. In level 1, they could sprinkle it. In level 2, if they had drip irrigation, they could also continue to water.
Well, anyway, so those costs are coming to council on a budget item in the future? Is that what you're suggesting? What?
I say, I think that was the intent, is that it will come back as a budget item.
All right. Well, I think we should consider just giving them some break on how they water the berm, if it's a lot of money. But okay. All right, we'll move on.
Good. Thank you. Councillors, anything else?
Just 1 second. Let me just get down here. I'll jump over a few. Councillor Bain had those. There was a statement on page 16 under Mayor's report. Lions Bay alert can be checked to see if we can be used for beach closures. Did we ever get an answer on that? I think someone had suggested if you had some sort of E. coli or outbreak of some sort, that could we use Lions Bay alert to inform people the beaches on beach closures. It's still an open question. I'm not sure who was tasked to take it away and get the answer, but
It's possible. You can put out an alert through Lions Bay Alert for anything. So it's definitely possible.
I think the intent, though, was to ensure that it doesn't get used for too many different things, or people will not treat it with the seriousness that it needs to be treated. But I would hazard to say that beach closure would be a serious enough matter that it ought to be included, as an option using that form of communication. So it really depends upon what policies we set for the use of that communication tool. And we haven't come up with anything formal. We have talked about different ideas and different principles, as just mentioned, just making sure that, it doesn't get overused. But I would suggest that, yes, we could probably use it for this.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Then I believe, unless my councillors disagree, then I recognize this as an operational issue, and that you've said you probably will. I think I would respectfully ask on behalf of the council that the alert system is used for occasions like this. I think it's serious enough, and word will get out quickly. Thank you. Councillors, any other changes? I have one, and that is on page 21. A piece of correspondence from Mrs. Mazakowski was to be responded to with the return of the Public Works Manager. It's not dissimilar to Ms. Phillips's email. My recommendation is that I don't believe the CAO has responded, that for the next meeting that this is added to the unfinished business piece. Fine with that, CAO?
Yeah.
Good, thank you. Moving on to unfinished business. The action items, 210 CAO. This is still a work in progress, I believe, in conjunction with the Bear Smart people, or are we dealing with that tonight?
Yeah, I'm not sure where we're at on this.
Let's leave it here for now, and we'll find out very shortly. Item 225 to Mr. Barretto, or Resident Barretto.
Corresponded.
Yep. It's already done.
I'll have some follow-up.
Yeah. Thank you. And I thought I saw to Mr. Minke earlier this afternoon.
Yeah.
And I think you've already covered the berm topic.
Right.
And Councillor Abbott to Mrs. Bramble, to be responded.
I've had a discussion with her. There's been a suggestion, if council agree, that I maybe via a Zoom call poll a couple of residents in the hotspot Sunset Drive, Mountain Drive, and just get a sort of lesson learned from them, what they think did work and didn't work this summer, as opposed to the previous year. And I'm prepared to do that if everyone thinks it's a good idea.
I appreciate the volunteerism, but there's kind of a structure to this. Would you suggest, CAO, if we're going to be seeking feedback from a broad section of the population?
I'm not quite sure I understand the proposal.
The proposal was I put a call together with, I thought of 4 residents who have written before on parking matters that are closely impacted, 2 at the end of Sunset, one of them being the Branfelds, and 2 on Mountain, and just ask them call informally, have a bit of a discussion, what they think worked this year of the changes we made and what didn't. And then bring that to council and see if we use it as lessons learned or if it does go into something more formal as the mayor is suggesting.
I think that perhaps the notion of obtaining feedback from the residents on what they felt worked and didn't work would be a good topic for a survey, community-wide survey. We're going to be shortly getting some feedback from the bylaw officers for putting together an end of year report as to what they thought worked well, what didn't, and what the issues were, and areas that we can perhaps look at doing differently. I think that in the same vein, it would be useful to have more of a general request for feedback from the community on things that they observed and things they liked, things they didn't like. That would be my suggestion. I think it was probably something that was going to come forward at a staff meeting in any event.
Are you fine with that, Councillor Abbott, if we go a bit broader on our reach? And we,
Yeah,
and we-
sure. I just thought I'd bounce some of these ideas that
Okay.
so Brownfield had with a few others and see if what stuck. But
You're fine? Okay, thank you. So I'm going to suggest that if you haven't responded to Mrs. Brandville directly, that your phone call and advising her would suffice for me, and it'd be a strike on this item.
I'll get back to it again.
Thank you very much. Okay, and staff reports. First one's the CFO. And before you is the 2021 capital expense summary, and the recommendation is that the report should be received for information purposes. I'll put that forward. Councillor Abbott, would you second that?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Thank you. CFO, could you carry the day with us on this?
Yes, so this was originally presented at the last meeting in July. However, the public works manager was away on vacation. So it was suggested that it be brought back to this meeting with more up-to-date numbers. So I ran the reports basically up to the end of August. And that would give us an opportunity to review it with the public works manager in attendance, as many of these projects are his projects, if he would be available to answer any questions. So in our usual approach where we just ask council if they have any questions.
Thank you. I'll go first, and then I'll go to Councillor Abbott, and I'll run through. Actually, I won't. Start with Councillor Barmeyer. Councillor Barmeyer, can you unmute? You have the floor.
Yeah, I just had a few notes. Pretty simple, I think. The first one was with respect to the kiosk wrap. Just wanted to clarify that that's eligible under the grant. So that would be paid for with the grant and not any additional funds.
That project was budgeted with combination of the loan, the $600,000 loan, and then the balance of the loan for the Clean Water Wastewater project, and the balance of the grant for the Clean Water Wastewater project. So yes, it will be funded with the combination of those two things, the loan and the grant.
So what's the percentage, just roughly? I can't remember.
I guess it was about 2/3 loan and 1/3 grant.
Okay, so 2/3 would be okay. 2/3 would be borrowing for the kiosk wrap expense,
Which we already have. Yeah, we borrowed last year. And the reason the ratios is off is we had money left over from the Clean Water grant. So we wanted to be able to apply it to the PRV project.
So if we don't use the loan money, it goes back. Right? We save that money basically.
Yeah, it doesn't go back. We have to keep repaying it. There's different repayments, but we will use it all. The project basically will use all of the combination of the loan and the grant as it was budgeted.
Okay. I guess I was wondering if we're obviously paying attention to alternative grants opportunities for the Bayview WIP program. I'm assuming we're keeping an eye on grant opportunities as they come up. Is that a thing that we do, sort of continuously screen for grants?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. They're pretty much on hold now. After the award of the beach park, we're waiting for the next intake of the ICIP grants, which
Right.
they're the ones we usually apply for, all of them. But with the federal election and depending on the results, we're anticipating it'll probably be early next year before the earliest where we would see the next intake.
Okay, just one more question. On the Lions Bay Avenue Connector project, talks about waiting on contractual agreement from Transit, but that doesn't supersede us reviewing the technical scope of the project and seeing what it's actually going to look like, what it includes. Right? I mean, we still haven't done that. We still haven't seen what's actually going to get done for that money.
No, at this point, I'm still working with Modi on some of the aspects that affect the on-ramp area and the park and ride area. So just trying to figure out what they can see working, and then we'll be moving on to getting some concept drawings done up so that we can take it to the public and get feedback that way and flesh it out more. So
Thank you. Thanks, Peter.
Before I go to the other councillors, and again, what would your timing? I know if I can talk about the three major pieces we've got where there's grant funding involved, the connector, the clad building, and the beach park. Could you give us a very broad, I know it's early, a broad sense of timing of where you see things going? You've mentioned that going to the public. When would that be about? On the connector?
Hopefully within the next couple of months. It depends on how long it takes to sort of take care of some of the technical aspects before moving on to the concept drawings.
Okay, and the clad building, we're moving on that already. And on the beach park, what's your sense for timing for that?
It's the public works manager, myself, and the finance officer haven't really had a chance to sort of map all that out yet. So that's still work that is on our plates. So I can't really give you a very accurate answer at this point in time.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Abbott and then Councillor Barmere.
Yeah. I just had two more questions.
Councillor Barmere.
I'll keep it super brief, Neville. On the next page, the UBCM grant funded initiatives, the EOC and the ESS equipment. Just a broad question, Pam, would we be eligible for those grants if we, regardless of whether we're rural or urban, would that make a difference? You know?
I'm not sure. I don't think it makes a difference. No, not with UBCM. Like when I've done the applications, is there ever any questions about who we are? We just say Village of Lions Bay and then we fill in the grant application. So I would say no.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Armeyer, just to drill down on that a little bit. The only fund that really makes any difference on was the rural development or rural dividend fund, which metro communities were excluded from. We sought to have an exemption from that, as did Bowen Island. Bowen Island managed to get some monies out. Mind you, they're part of the Islands Trust, so they had a leg up there. But our lobbying and efforts with the various ministries were unsuccessful in that respect. And that fund, as it stands now, I don't think is really being used in the manner in which it was originally intended. It's being used for communities that are suffering from or need relief in the forest sector for the most part, as I understand it. So there aren't too many grant opportunities that are dependent upon whether the community is rural or urban, in the sense of whether or not, as that those terms are defined were not defined in the metro context.
Thanks, Peter.
Councillor Abbott?
Yeah, just before I go to my questions here, just to add to what Peter said. Bowen is not the only place that managed to get that exception, because it's both Metro and Capital District that are excluded. In the Capital District, they got an exception for everyone in their rural areas, which are actually electoral areas. So I don't know if we were rural, maybe there's an opportunity, maybe there's a chance, but anyway, just a thought. Just other, Pam, more made me think of something. Would it be easy enough, or should be easy enough, just to add a column here that gives a grant status on each one of these? Because it's nice to know whether you're looking at, 100-cent dollars or 60-cent dollars or 50-cent dollars.
Yep, I can do that. Basically, which ones are grant funded and what percent is grant funded?
Yeah, what percentages, and then when we're looking at, we know how much is ours and how much is a gift.
I can do that.
Okay. Ron, you touched on the Baby DWIP project and the next round of grant funding. Not for this meeting, but I think we should be re-looking that project and seeing if we can de-scope it and see if we can take some of the nice to haves out there. I know they're nice to haves that Mr. Jaffa might have a very personal interest in, like flattening corners and things, but I think we should do that before we go further with that project. And then my next question, also for another meeting, is, so what do we do now? We're going to have two large projects engineered based on what we approved this year. What do we do with them? I'm sure we can apply for more than one when the ICVIP grant comes out, so we're going to have to decide how to deal with that. And I think de-scoping should be part of the discussion.
Councillor Abbott, if I might make a suggestion that I think it would be my view that with the upheaval that the government is in due to the election, and by the time they get organized, and with the extremely length of time before we ever approve anything, it wouldn't stun me that if we made an application for anything, it would be the next council, it would be the recipient of it. I think you're somewhat accurate in breaking down what were larger projects, larger grant requests into smaller bite size, what we can do, what we need to do, and maybe not use the platinum standard. So I get what you're going with that, and I would recommend that you bring this up during our strategy session where we're talking about CapEx. My sense is that with three fairly decent projects, round numbers, $250,000 for the connector, the $500,000 for the clat, and $1 million, one and change-ish for the beach park, that's going to probably fill staff's hands this year. But I'm in agreement with if I got your term right, the bite-sized approach.
Yeah, and I was also looking at removing scope completely if it's something we can live without.
Councillor Abbott, I know Councillor Cunliffe's keen. Either finish up or let her go. I'm going to move on.
The item on the wastewater treatment plant. Can someone remind me what that is? It says wastewater treatment plant year to date 10,000, budget 16, 5 left. Project complete. We only spent 66%.
That was just our best estimate of what was left of the project when I was doing the budget. So, so it was just the sewer treatment plant. So basically, we completed it with 10,000, and I had budgeted 16. It was just the last few bills for EHD and some other things, but the project is complete. So we came in a little under budget. Overall, like it was a huge project. I was just trying to estimate the amount that was left to get done in 2021.
Okay, what still needs to be done in 2021? Okay, that makes more sense. No, couldn't make sense then.
Yeah, it's often hard to estimate that last little bit of the project. So yeah, but the project is complete, so nothing else is being charged to it.
Okay, a couple others touched on the lines where on the beach park project and where that goes. There's another one. I think we need some clarity of scope. before we go into it. Even though we have got the grant for $1 million, I'm not sure we need to spend $1 million, but that'll be another discussion. On the fire washer dryer question, is there any way that can be rolled into the CLAT building upgrades if there's sufficient funds in that grant?
No, it didn't cover that type of equipment, but also that's a really, really tight budget. As we explained, we had actually, the cost of the project actually came in higher. We were trying to find a sweet spot for numbers. So to help us get the grant, that includes a lot of in-kind work by some of the firefighters to get things done. So that I would say there's no room in that budget at all.
Second last item from one of the pages says equipment for trucks, computer equipment for trucks. I assume that means fire trucks, right?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Yes, fire trucks. I should have clarified.
Okay. All right. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Cunliffe. And Councillor Bain, I thought I saw you there.
Yeah, really quick. Where it says laptop for CAO / Amos parking module, it's a lump sum, but what is the Amos parking module, and is there a breakdown of what those two items would be, or are they both combined together?
Yeah, so I don't have the split on the budget, but what the Amos was, that's our software, and we had purchased about 75% of the cost was for the reason they were lumped is they go to the same account. We have purchased a module for our software which we're still installing to help do the automated tickets, to try and eliminate the need to have huge Excel spreadsheets manually tracking every single ticket we issue.
Okay.
So that's what that was. Sorry, I used lingo I shouldn't have. I should have been more clear. Amos is our accounting software, and we bought a module for that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, acronyms I'm not great with. And then when you say engine 63, I'm assuming that is a used fire truck.
It is. It's a small truck. Yeah, it's a small kind of truck.
Wildland first response truck.
Yes, thank you.
Wildland fire. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Thank you.
So seems like it's a pretty definite thing, but we're just waiting that it's a fire department who's going to sell it to us, but they have to replace it first. So until they have their new truck, then the plan is they will sell us the used one, which is in very good condition. So
Excellent. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bain, I saw your hand up. Is it down, or do you want to have a question?
Oh, it's just a thumbs up for the sewer plant coming in under budget.
Thank you very much. Back to you, Councillor Abbott.
So just thinking a little bit more on my glossed over the beach park. Is it coming back to council, that beach park scope? Because some of the comments and stuff I've seen in our communication survey and things I've heard within residents, just socially and bumping into people on the street, it seems like we should be questioning what of that scope we really need to do, regardless of whether we've got $1 million grant or not. Is that coming back to council, and at what point to review that?
I think the CAO has told you he's not sure at what point, but
Yeah, I think
I wasn't clear from the CAO whether that we're just going to go ahead with the scope as envisaged on that board, including basketball hoops and paved areas and all the rest of it, or was it coming back for us to, or even potentially going back to residents to confirm what the scope should be?
I think what we would like to do is review and bring back what the plan is, what the scope is, address any areas that have potential for change, or where there may be a desire to get additional feedback. But I think for the most part, I think we've got a design that was approved. We can't really vary too much from that because, as was advised to us by the province when we had discussions about this, when you put forward what you're going to do, They really don't like it if you start making changes and you don't do what you said you were going to do. So we have to exercise a bit of caution with respect to that, but I think it is important to bring it back, refresh everybody's memory. I saw that there were some correspondence from a couple of residents putting forward some ideas about the park improvements. And there was, I think, there had been a discussion about the original design was to move the boat racks over to the south side of the park, and then that changed based upon feedback that we got at the time. So the boat racks are, the end design was for them to be on the north side of the park. So and that hadn't been picked up on by some of the residents. So I think it would be prudent and helpful to bring it back and remind everybody what it is, what the plan is, and how we intend to move it forward in a way that's going to be most efficient and practical, and what sort of timelines we're likely looking at, and all those kinds of things. So we will come back with a plan and the plan.
Thank you very much. See you.
I just hope it doesn't mean that on reflection, if we think there's something we really don't want on reflection, we're forced to build it just because we asked for a grant. That would be a little bit silly, but okay.
Thank you very much.
When it comes back.
Good. I think I don't see any more hands. I will call a motion and request confirmation that the report is received for information purposes. All in favor, please confirm by saying yes. Opposed, no.
Yes.
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 Carried. And with thanks for the detail on this CFO work. Public Works Manager. The staff recommendation regarding the kiosk wrap is the council award the Upper Bayview kiosk wrap contract to Century Signs and Awning in the amount of $7,008.50, and that council authorize the mayor and corporate officer to execute contract documents substantially in the form attached. I will put forward that motion. Council, can I have a hand to show a second? Thank you. Any Public Works Manager, you want to quickly cover this if there's anything more? You're muted, Public Works Manager.
Thank you. Just a quick summary. We went out to 12 graphic design firms. We received pricing back from 4 of them. Century Signs was the lowest bid and had the best warranty on both material and installation. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you very much. Councillor Burmeyer, questions?
Yeah, I mean, this, and I just to confirm, so I'm not making a mistake here. It's strictly for aesthetic purposes that we're putting this wrap off. There's no safety signage attached to this. There's no safety reasons or operational reasons to put a wrap on this kiosk, right? It's strictly for aesthetics.
That's correct. If you recall, we went out to the public in June, and it was unanimous for the residents on Bayview that they wanted to see a wrap on this kiosk.
Yeah, I understand, but it's strictly aesthetic. So I just want
absolutely strictly aesthetic.
Yeah, and I guess I wonder if we couldn't make it a community art project instead and have it be free as opposed to borrowing $4,700 to pay for it.
That was asked during the communication we did in June. And the response back was that they wanted a camouflage wrap to make it blend in, not an arts wrap or something designed to make it stand out.
Right. Okay.
Thank you very much, Councillor Abbott.
Yeah, just a little thing. I glanced through the contract that's attached. Page 36, it talks about monthly progress payments. I'm assuming this is a one-time payment once they're done, right? That's just standard language in our contract.
That's correct, yes.
Any further questions? Councillor Abbott? Good. Councillors, any other questions for the Public Works Manager? There being none, call the motion. I will call the motion. All those in favor of the recommendation as read and seconded, please confirm by saying yes. Opposed, no.
I'm a no.
Yes.
Yes.
Carried. Thank you. Councillor Barmeyer, do you want your no recorded?
Whether he does or not, it is.
It is. Thank you. Sorry.
No, I want it recorded.
Thank you. The next recommendation from staff is that council authorize staff to engage with BA Blacktop to perform the municipality's 2021 paving related work substantially in accordance with the unit rates identified in this report, and the council authorize the mayor and corporate officer to execute contract documents for the municipality's paving related works substantially in accordance with the confidential unit rates referenced in this report. I will put forward that motion. Can I have a second by hand from the councillor? Thank you. Public Works Manager. I love it when we do paving in Lions Bay. We're going to do a lot of it. What can you tell us about it? You're muted.
So essentially, what we've done is we've looked at the infrastructure master plan and the ratings for road and ride comfort and the pavement condition index and selected Isle Place as the next paving job. There are a significant other amounts of paving that are required in the village, but they're all contingent upon either underground water main work or drainage rehabilitation prior to. The budget is 50,000 over our existing 125 budget. And the idea is to balance that with the savings from the railway crossing budget and some insurance, vehicle insurance costs, and then the balance would come from reserves.
Very much. Councilors, any questions?
I've got
Councilor Abbott?
a couple of questions. When it was read out in the resolution, it refers to as these unit rates. But the quantities, are the quantities taken, were the quantities calculated by the contractor or by us? And so I guess it was the quantities that were calculated by the contractor. Are we on the hook for any increase in quantities, or were they given to the contractor, in which case will be remeasured at the end? No,
the quantities were determined by staff, and that's basically to do all of Isleview. And there won't be any additional costs, similar to last year.
So that was my question. So how did we do last year? So was there any additional costs?
No, there was not.
They accepted your quantities, are correct?
Yeah, so what they do is we walk the streets with them, and we jointly come up with the quantities.
Right, so the quantities are agreed in advance.
Yeah,
so there's no
in advance.
There's no risk. Okay.
There's no risk
makes it a lump sum contract, doesn't
it? Pretty much, yes. But based on unit rates that were determined by an open public tender on quantities in West Van.
And then the two PRV patch jobs, so those are what ate up the rest of that budget then we spoke about earlier, correct?
They will come out of the PRV project budget, yes.
Any more questions, Councillor Abbott?
No, I'm not trying to make sense of my own question. No, that's fine. I'm good.
Thank you very much. To the balance of the councillors, do you have any further questions for the Public Works Manager? Councillor Abbott, last call. Your
I'm
hands
good.
up.
Just my hand, sorry.
Okay, thank you. I will call a motion. All those in favor of the recommendations on the table, please confirm by saying yes. Those opposed say no.
Yes.
Aye.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, and great job, Works Manager. Next item is that the municipal coordinator will be presenting briefly. And the recommendation that the Lions Bay Communication Survey results be received. Before I put that forward for a second, I do have my eye on the clock, and I'm cognizant of the things that we need to do tonight and the things that are likely to be tabled or put to the CSC. I think the communication survey probably does not have to be acted on immediately, so I would be fairly sparse in your questioning, but know that we'll be using this as our reference document in the future. I'll put forward the recommendation. Can I have a second by hand? Thank you for that. Yes, municipal coordinator, can you concisely run us through this and then await the councillor's questions?
Yeah, just the 2021 communication survey results. I just concisely put them in a graphic visual so that you could see the results as well as the comments. There's 164 respondents to the survey, and it looks to be about most people were pretty satisfied with communications. Most people rely on the village update, and then the actions that staff can take coming out of the survey results are found at the end there, and that includes improving the website, adding concise bullet form notes on outcomes of the council meeting decisions, and encouraging more concise information with links to more information on the website, more information on upcoming projects, seeing if the Lions Bay Neighbors Administrators would share the village update on Facebook, and improvements to responding to inquiries. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Well, I'm not sure what you were suggesting earlier. I mean, this is going to come back when, in what form, and there's a bunch of action items there. I think there's a lot of stuff that we need to discuss and kick around. And if you're suggesting
I would
now's not
suggest,
the night, I'll probably agree with you. I don't know.
I think there's a lot of, as my personal view, Councillor Abbott, there's a lot of good stuff there, and quite candidly, we could talk about it. And for a long period, I just, given what I've mentioned consistently this evening, tonight's probably not the best night for that. So I'd suggest if councillors have a particular question or point to raise to the municipal coordinator, they do. And we'll have this in our hand, and I'm sure it will be part of the strategy session for sure. And we just, as the recommendation is that we receive this. So I'll hand it back to the councillors. How you'd like, if you have any questions, this is the time.
I don't have a question as much as a comment. Thank you, Carla, for coordinating this and getting this sent out and putting this together for us. And I just want to express my appreciation for all the residents that took the time to offer us feedback in a positive or constructive form. It's information, it's very helpful, and it is much appreciated. So thank you all.
Okay, but I'll evoke some response from the councillors. Councillor Barmier, I'm not trying to pick on you, but if you've got any general comments or thoughts, this would be a good time to share for a minute.
I mean, the comments were, you know, there's lots to be had there. I think one of the comments that stood out to me, and I don't know why, but it was a question that came up. I'd love to see updates regarding progress on rules and logistics for subdividing our land. And I guess immediately what the question that jumped to mind for me was, why can't people subdivide their land now? What's holding them up?
CAO.
Well, Well, there are issues that council still has to come to terms with respect to the community amenity contributions policy and with the presence of geohazards that have to be accounted for in terms of where densification will be allowed and where it will be restricted in accordance with the obligations under the community charter to have policies and procedures with respect to dealing with those issues when they're present. So the CACs.
So our current bylaws do not allow for subdivision?
Our current bylaws are not conducive or do not provide for a means of doing so, other than there are provisions within the development sorry, trying to think of the name of the bylaw. Development Procedures Bylaw 431, I think it is, provides for all of the different aspects of items that need to be addressed in any kind of a development procedure or in a development subdivision or otherwise. People have certain rights under the Community Charter and the Local Government Act, but council also has certain obligations with respect to what can and can't be done as well in terms of subdivision. The approving officer has a number of legislative requirements to follow, and the ability to do so without guidance from council with respect to dealing with geohazards makes for a very difficult situation in terms of moving anything forward. So yeah, it's not a simple answer. It's not an uncomplicated landscape. There's a lot of issues that need to be dealt with.
So how did people subdivide their land before?
It would depend on the circumstances. There's all kinds of different.
So we simply don't have the toolkit to allow for subdivisions, is what you're saying. If I have a large parcel, I can't break it up into 2 lots to build 2 single-family homes.
There are restrictions on what you can and can't do in the zoning bylaw in terms of the size of your property and whether or not you will have the ability to subdivide it. That's laid out in the zoning bylaw. It was anticipated that there would be a direction to go a certain way when bylaw was developed in 2017. So there are provisions made for subdivision, but they are also dependent upon council having a policy with respect to community amenity contributions, which hasn't yet been finalized, as well as density bonusing and what will be permitted and what the cost of doing so will be. But yeah, there's restrictions on size. You have to have a parcel of a certain size before you can even think about it.
No, I understand that.
Yeah, and parcels of a smaller size, but above a certain threshold are eligible for putting a cottage, but not subdividing. But again,
I guess I'm just trying to understand if the current bylaws we have simply these tools are not adequate for any kind of subdivision, or are we saying we're not comfortable doing that because or staff isn't comfortable doing that because there's some legislation outside of Lions Bay telling us we can't?
There are development requirements that require council to have, for the municipality to have certain bylaws and certain policies with respect to some of the things that I've mentioned. So
if we don't want to have community contribution agreements, we can choose not to though, right? There's no one saying we have to do that.
There's no mandate that you have it, no.
Okay.
All pretty much everyone else has moved in that direction as providing an alternative source of revenue, one which can be quite lucrative depending upon the circumstances. But no, there's no mandate that you have to do that.
Okay.
However, we do have zoning, sorry, just to tidy that up a little bit. We do have a zoning bylaw that anticipates that requirement. So unless you amend the zoning bylaw, yes, actually, we do have a requirement that at the moment that somebody complies with the CAC policies of council, but council hasn't yet finalized that CAC policy.
So sorry, just one last question, just because I just want to go full circle here. What can a person do if they have a large enough lot? Can they do anything? Currently, under the current framework?
It would really depend, Councillor Barmeyer, on the circumstances of the particular request.
Okay. Okay.
I can't really say more without, having a really in-depth conversation about particular circumstances.
Yeah, I know. I guess I just intuitively, I would think if you've got a 1/4 acre or if you've got 3/4 acre, you could theoretically do 3 single-family lots because that's what our neighborhoods are like. And I guess if we can't even do that, I guess then we do really have a bit of an issue.
Well, there are requirements of subdivision that the approving officer must follow with respect to that section of the legislation. So there are a number of requirements that become very complicated when no policy has yet been set by council with respect to such things as geohazards.
Okay.
I mean, the approving officer could go off and make decisions, but I don't think council would want the approving officer, who's me, to go off and make those kinds of decisions without some guidance in terms of policy in the direction that you would like to see the municipality going on these fairly big picture meaty items.
Okay, thanks, Peter.
Thank you very much. Councillor Abbott and then Councillor Cunliffe.
Yeah, that was a whole big discussion that probably wasn't on the agenda tonight. So I'm not going to go into some of that was mentioned there, but people should also note that CACs, there's a lot of pressure on actually doing away with CACs because it's been decided those are inflationary and creating one part of the housing problem. And anyway, I'm not going to go into that discussion. There's a lot of things to discuss there. General communication survey, back to where you wanted our general comments. I agree with a lot of what Carl has put down as the next work actions. I think each of those need to be worked through one by one. I think there's some good stuff there. I do not agree with the statement that people are generally satisfied. When I read the comments, I came away with feeling like I got a bit of a whipping. I didn't feel like people are generally satisfied, but I guess that's just how you look at it. There's a lot of stuff in there that people seem to be unhappy with. So I'm assuming we've all read the comments for ourselves and aren't just basing it on quite a summary. I think, the website, definitely there's a lot of talk about, we're doing some work there. I think Carla's aware of that. She started to do some of that. That to me is a place we should focus. And I also think there's several comments in different areas about trying to get some sort of summary, and largely from council, because they refer to council, as to council's decisions. There's been suggestions of a sort of a shortened kind of version of the minutes, decisions that are made by council and why they're made, something that's easy to read. That theme comes up consistently, and I think that's the other thing that should rise to the top here. We need to wrap our heads around, see if we can do better. But yeah, I'll wait till these different action items come back, because tonight's not the night. There's going to be a fair bit of discussion on it. So that's just my first thoughts. I didn't feel like people were satisfied there.
Thank you very much, Councillor Abbott. Councillor Cunliffe, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I was going to dive into the geohazard assessment, and this is not the time. So a
Thank you.
discussion for another time.
Thank you very much for restraining yourself. Councillor Bain, any final words on this one?
No comments from me. I think it's all been said quite well.
Thank you very much. I will call a motion, and can we confirm that the recommendation that the report be received? All those in favor, please confirm by saying yes. Those opposed say no.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Excellent work, Municipal Coordinator. The next one is the CAO procedure bylaw amendments. And this is the staff recommendation. Before I begin this, I said this is the CAO has done a good work here. It's we're not going to make a final decision on this. The province is going to be setting the table for us. So I think we should put down any suggestions we have for staff, but move on quickly so we can get to the next topic. Back to this, that the information report procedure bylaw amendments be received, and that council direct staff to receive potential bylaw amendments and produce an electronic meeting policy as per the guidelines. And I've changed the wording for council's consideration. Can I have a second for that? Thank you. Councillor Barmayer, you've got questions?
It was more of a comment in that, I do think this is a worthwhile thing to pursue simply because it can reduce commuting and greenhouse gas emissions. And it's a mature technology. If we can have residents participate remotely, it will foster more resident participation. So I think there's a number of layers of why this is a good thing to pursue.
I concur. I'll speak later, but first, Councillor Abbott.
Yeah, I largely concur. I think it'd be a sad day if we go back to where we used to be. I think it certainly helps with communication. It allows the residents to listening to meetings without coming to sit in the hall for 3 hours or 2 hours or whatever it takes. I thought the reason this report was in here was just to get a feel for how council felt about electronic meetings, and I do like the fact that we have this option for electronic meetings, and I think we're going to need it going forward. So I'm very much be in favor of some sort of policy that allows us to do more, not less, and certainly not go back to where we were. I guess closer to the time is a question of just how much in presence one feels you need to have in order to be truly representative or meeting the obligations of the community charter, etc.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Hope we can, I'm sure we can work it out, and I'll certainly be in favor of it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Abbott. Councillor Cunliffe, and then I'm going to ask Councillor Bain, and I'll close.
Yeah, I would echo everything that Councillor Barmeyer and Councillor Abbott stated, and I just wanted to really note that in the communication survey, there was a lot of support from residents who may not otherwise participate because they had to come in person. So I think that it's excellent for a public participation perspective on top of everything else.
Thank you, Councillor Cunliffe. Councillor Bain.
Yeah, all good comments. I have nothing more to add.
Thank you very much. I'll close on this before I call a motion. I'm on the TransLink and Metro boards and meetings. It's been promoted that the return to normal means back in the chair. The mayors do not share that viewpoint. And along the lines that my colleagues have said, the maximum flexibility is desired, and that's been clearly mentioned in other boards. I think for our residents, this is not that the pandemic is in any way a gift, but prior to that, the larger municipalities had Surrey TV or Port Coquitlam TV, and you could watch the council meetings. We didn't have the ability to do that. Now we do. I just don't see us going backwards. It's greater freedom for the gallery, access to the council members. So I think that the CAO won't be inventing the wheel here, but I think he's heard his council's views pretty clear in that. That being said, I will call a motion. All those in favor, please confirm receipt of the report. confirmation of the recommendation by saying yes, those opposed no.
Yes.
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 Good, thank you very much. To my colleagues, I see it's 20 after 8, and I would suggest that two of the next three topics are meaty. After the first one, I'll touch base with you on the time allocation. So I'm just being the clock keeper at the moment. So what's next on is item 6, and this is regarding the supporting community activities and events, specifically hall insurance. And that council provide direction to staff with respect to the issues outlined in this report. It's the recommendation. I'll presume a second. Can I see a hand? Thank you. CEO, did you want to give a quick recap and then we'll let the council members go?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much all laid out there. I think that I don't really have anything much to add. So why don't I just wait for questions?
Thank you very much. Councillor Barmeyer, this is your baby. Off you go.
Yeah, I guess in an effort to be expedient and not hold everyone up, Peter, I thought I could just give you my comments, and I'm not asking for any kind of major discussion on them, and maybe we can just give ourselves some time to think about them. But I would just going to rattle off my comments, and then we can address them at any point, and maybe some of them require a bit of digging into. I took, I kind of made it simple in that I just looked at the slide presentation at the end of the latest report, and I just made some comments there. First comment is with respect to the village volunteer policy 1402. And I guess my question was how much effort it would take to see a new draft, and whether that new draft will address our concerns. So that's a basic question. The second comment I had was the bullet point was, if council wishes to create a services for activities and events in order to provide insurance coverage under the municipality's insurance umbrella, for the current organizers of such activities and events will require a good deal of work to set up the model, may require additional staffing and will result in additional costs. And to me, that all felt a little heavy. I just feel like what we're asking is fairly simple. So my comment was that this sounds a bit alarmist. However, getting it right in order to reduce the threshold for willing volunteers is worth it. So I was asking if staff could please quantify this effort. Lions Bay needs volunteers to function in a healthy and vibrant way. That was my comment there. The next bullet point is, at the end of the day, there may be some activities, events which cannot operate this way because they take place outside of business hours and the requisite level of supervision may not be possible. So my question was, if council and staff have an appetite for considering OT and on a case-by-case basis, maybe not for regular programs, but something that might happen on occasion outside of staff hours. That's just a question. The next comment here was, all users of the hall are required to provide a minimum of 2M liability insurance, 5M if event includes alcohol. And I guess that under users, I wondered if that was an umbrella comment and if that included volunteers as well. And the next bullet point is, renters can utilize their own liability policy if they have one and simply add the village as an additional insured. And I guess my comment here was that I think it's important to distinguish between renters in general versus a volunteer running a program of benefit to the community. Then we go through the MIBC risk matrix for assessing risk of various activities. I'm familiar with that. I think that's a worthwhile exercise. And I think on slide, it's page 171, council could decide that other activities or events are worthy of being deemed municipal services. Example, parents' tots, music together, etc. And to me, this is the crux of the issue. And I truly believe council and not staff need to decide what programs are of community benefits and could be considered a service to the community in what feels like a bit of a rigid definition thereof. So I do think we need to flesh that out. It's unfortunate it's taken, this is taking a lot of time. It's an important issue, and I think we need to get it right so that going forward, volunteerism is an easy thing to do in Lions Bay. I think I have 3 more comments. The next one is where we talk about low risk activities on page 17 of the slideshow. Council may determine that there are some activities which are of such low risk that no insurance is required. Parents and tots, music together, yoga, crafts, quilting, caroling, etc. And to me, this comes back to the lack of a village tolerance, risk tolerance policy. And I do think a risk assessment, although time consuming, is worth considering, so we can put this into context for everybody and make a decision and an assessment of risk we can all be comfortable with. On the option slide, which is the last one, point 2, you say, consider if any activities, events are of such low risk, they do not require any insurance, although organizers can opt in if desired. And from a personal perspective, this would be my preference, and I don't think, we've become a bit of a fearful society, and I don't know if that's necessarily always appropriate. So it comes back to that risk tolerance exercise, and if it's something we could go through. And my last comment is relates to point 4, which is point 4 is consider the creation of a recreation culture service, including some or all of the current activities and events listed in the staff report attachment. This option would require significant additional work, not currently within staff's work plan or council budget. And I would just ask if you could please provide, just a rough budget and timeline for this. Because again, I truly believe volunteerism is key to making our village work well. And those are my comments, Peter. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Armare. Peter, it's a long list. I think where this would go is I'd like to see all of the councillors have their hands up now, that we gather the information and give this a chance for you to come back to us again. Councillor Abbott, and then Councillor Cunliffe, and then Councillor Bain.
I went and consulted my notes from the previous meeting. This came the first time, and I have a slew of highlights throughout the document as well. But I'm not going to go through those. Right now, for me, I think it's fairly simple. I do not believe the option of creating system. Forget what word was used, where staff a recreation and culture service, where staff are now obligated to be on board whenever we're going to the hall. I don't think that's an option, and I really don't think we should go there. Over time, or even if it's during the day. I don't believe that's the option we consider.
Councillor Abbott, if I may, just to be clear, you are in favor of or not in favor of the recreation and culture service concept?
I'm absolutely against it. We don't need to create any more staff, and was told it's going to take another staff member to do it. Not absolutely against it.
Just wanted to make sure we heard you.
As to the SPAs, and taking that approach. And in the last meeting, I suggested there was four events that we needed to consider, and that was minuted in the last meeting. I was hoping there was going to be some sort of update here if we made any progress on that. I could remind people what they were if I need to. It was the volleyball. I'm trying to get that part. The volleyball, the badminton, the crafts, and what was the fourth one? Find the minutes, I guess, that'll be quicker. Playgroup, volleyball, badminton, and the craft day. I boiled down to those four things: the volunteer services. They're only everyone that comes. No money changes hands, other than maybe everyone chips in to pay for the cost of the insurance and the teas and biscuits, maybe. And they're for residents, and they're run by residents, and they're open to everyone. For me, those criteria made those the four we should be focusing on. They're no different to, the other items that are part of the senior circle in my mind, even though I know that started somewhere else and hence it's in a different category. And I thought we could make some sort of progress on that tonight, but I guess not. And then once again, the other big thing for me is it's not the cost of the insurance. The document keeps talking about the insurance and it's reasonable. And the portal now works. It didn't work before and it was frustrating. It's not that. It's not the $25. It's not whatever it is. It's this liability idea that the person that holds the hall, rents the hall, or puts their name down on the form at the top, holds the village harmless. That needs to be corrected. And whether it's $2 million or $5 million, if it's $2 million insurance and someone's got a $3 million claim and you're telling me the person that signed the form, that organized the event, is on hook for the extra $1 million, that is just not reasonable on village volunteers. That needs to be corrected. That's the big thing for me.
Thank you very much, Councillor Abbott. Councillor Conlon.
And I do have line-by-line detail on this, but I won't go there because we're not going to get through it.
Well, I think to my colleagues, I can see this is going to be probably we move to a CSC topic, but I think let's continue with the dialogue so the CIO has the information. Councillor Conlon.
I think that Councillor Barmeyer and Abbott have pretty much summarized all of my comments, and I just wanted to concur with Councillor Abbott that removing those activities that people have a user fee for, and grouping those together as activities that contribute to the village. If you're paying a fee to attend, it should not be under the same sort of umbrella. But other than that, I think they've got a pretty good grip on where the direction we'd like to see this go.
Thank you very much, Councillor Conlon. Councillor Bain, and then if your hand stays up, Councillor Barmeyer, you'd be next.
I guess the interesting thing about being the last to speak is it's all been spoken what I was going to say by the three colleagues. So I'll just leave it at that.
Councillor Cunliffe, you want another go or your hand still up? Good, thank you. All right, colleagues, thank you very much for your contributions on this. CIO, I think we will not making a decision on this, not providing you direction other than our verbal comments. And what this would be to me is either we bring it to the next scheduled meeting, if that's fine with you, or we take this to an evening CSC as one of the 2 or 3 primary topics. What would you suggest?
Well, there always seems to be a number of other topics crowding
The agendas.
So, it probably needs a good discussion on the various different ideas and the various different ways in which council could proceed, and the nuances between some of those things. I will say that I did reach out to MIABC to get some clarification with respect to some aspects of the SPA agreements, but haven't got the answers back yet. So I'll follow up with that. That was as per the last meeting. But I think that probably it would be best to allocate this topic to CST.
I concur. To my colleagues then, I would put forward that motion at this topic so that we can have a very fulsome discussion without the pressure of the clock and the other items on a usually busy agenda, that we put this as one of the topics for what I expect will be a near future evening CSC session. I'll put forward that as a concept, and I think we could just, Councillor Barmeyer, do you concur? You said yes, Councillor Bain does, Councillor Barmeyer
Yes.
does. Okay, there we go. So the takeaway then is that is the desire, and that let's not work on the date right at this minute. But we'll do that in the near term. So thank you very much for that, colleagues. And the next one, and I have a hint of what this topic is about, which is the CAO's report on our Ocean View Road right of way. And
No, there's the,
and this is a verbal report.
just a sec. So with the assistance of the fire chief, who is an experienced contractor, we have had some discussions with a couple different developers about ideas. You'll recall that I had reached out to a couple of different developers back in the spring, but didn't get very far. Andrew has helped me move these things along. And I think one of the groups is at the point now they put some time and effort into it, come up with some concepts, and want to organize a meeting with Andrew and myself. So looking to do that fairly soon. And from that would then come back to council with what those ideas are, what those concepts are, and see where it goes.
Okay. Okay. So it's something in a process, and it's going to be coming back next meeting.
Probably next meeting, depending on when we can get the meeting accomplished. And
there's a third party
comes out of
involved
it.
here too.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Colleagues, any questions on this? So they're okay. Thank you very much. I'll put forward the motion to receive your verbal report. I have a second. Thank you. All those in favor, please confirm by saying yes. Those opposed, no.
Yes.
There we go. Which brings us to the next piece, which is the urban containment boundary discussion. And I have
Can I interject here, Ron, and make, with your eye on the clock, make a motion to strike this from the agenda as it was laid out during the revisiting of the minutes that we didn't actually request this report?
Your colleagues would have to agree to striking the report.
If I put a motion forward, can I get a second?
I'll second it to open the conversation.
Okay, the conversation's there. So back to you, Councillor Cunliffe. Why are you doing this? Since we have the report.
Well, we did not ask for it. We specifically asked not for it. And B, we are in a position where we're trying to keep things on time. And this spending time on something that wasn't asked for doesn't seem like a good use of time, personally.
Okay. Okay. So if we do not talk about, and somewhere this report is part of it, that we won't be talking about the urban containment boundary this evening. Okay. Councillor Abbott?
Yeah, I don't know that that's completely accurate. What we did ask for was that this came back to council to discuss in September. We didn't ask for a report. And if you listen to the minutes, clearly there were suggestions. We need to know what the question was. We wanted to go forward with some sort of public engagement. We should decide what that looked like. CAO said that we couldn't do that. And it needed to be part of an OCP review, and council disagreed. And what we got was a report saying it needs to be part of an OCP review, which is not accurate. So I don't want to accept the report for two reasons. One, it isn't accurate. It goes back, and the timing I too took the bother of phoning Heather McNell, as Peter did on Friday, and asked the same question, and maybe I worded it differently, and I got a very different response. So I asked her, did we have to do this in 2023 or 2022? And it had to be part of a OCP review. And she gave me the timing around the 2050 plan and why it was tricky. We're obligated to come up with some response to the 2050 plan by the 26th of November. Our main discussion on the 2050 plan in this village has been about the urban containment boundary. We can do that. We can get some public feedback on that. We can have that discussion and we can respond to the 2050 plan. And depending how the 2050 plan is received, because it may go ahead and be in readings next year. And Heather told me there's a possibility the board might decide in December not to do that. The board decided in December not to do that. We can certainly put in an application to change outside the urban containment boundary. If they are still in readings, then we can't do it till the end of that in June. But either way, we can still get this discussion going that we started 2.5 years ago and not just get to the end of this council having not discussed it. So that's why I believe we shouldn't receive the report, because it's not I agree with Jamie, it's not what we asked for, it's also not accurate. I also don't like the fact that it's got statements in there about buses being at risk. That's, in my words, Peter, that is just fear-mongering. It's not true. No one has ever said that. And I even asked Heather that. I said, is our designation in any way beside our bus service level? She said no. So I agree with Jamie. I don't want to receive and discuss this report, but I do think we're obligated to keep this conversation going. And what we agreed to do next was have a public engagement, have your say type discussion. Jamie wanted a town hall. There's various discussions on that. I thought that's what we were going to discuss tonight, that next step.
Okay. Councillor Cunliffe, Councillor Barmayer, do you want to weigh in here? There's a motion on the floor to
Yeah, I guess I'll weigh in that I'm a bit indifferent to whether the report is on the table or not. I do, however, feel like the conversation needs to stay active from this meeting to the next until we've got a path forward that we're comfortable with. The presentation by Metro was interesting. It was really no different than the last time they were here. And I think, the wood burning element is just the canary in the mine shaft as far as regulations that might come down the pipe that just don't fit for a community like ours. And that's, I guess, where, my concern comes in is what other large city bylaws are going to be enforced on a small community that just doesn't fit. When you look at, the reason Metro's around is because they have massive infrastructure that benefits millions of residents in Metro community. We will never have access to that, ever. We'll never have access to sewer. We'll never have access to their drinking water. So, I'm still having a hard time seeing the benefits of being part of that group, unless there's grant opportunities that I don't recognize, or some sort of dividends that we get, some sort of cash that comes our way because we're part of Metro, or are we actually paying into this and not seeing any benefits? I'm really struggling to see sort of the benefits of being part of that larger group. They have all this modeling on our population growth projections and housing projections. They're just completely out to lunch. This isn't going to work. So I don't know where they plan on putting all these houses. So yeah, it's a lot of it just doesn't fit. It's a model that works at a big scale, and for us it doesn't work. And I do recognize the discussion around densification in the report, and we know that's a red herring for Lions Bay. We know people are generally opposed to what that buzzword densification, And I think we have to have a really frank conversation about what economy of scale looks like in a large community like Metro versus a tiny community like ours in Lions Bay. Economy of scale doesn't work here. We simply have a much higher overhead and much higher costs just by the nature of being a small community. And we just have to have an open conversation about that. How are we going to pay for stuff? How are we going to pay for infrastructure improvements? How are we going to pay for the things that bigger cities have a much easier time paying for because they can pay into a bigger pool? So yeah, no, I know I'm kind of on a little bit of a monologue here, but I would like to keep this conversation going because I still feel like we're not getting to the crux of the questions that we're asking. Is what is the benefit of being part of this group, and are we being you know, I just fail to see the motivation behind it, but behind not having this conversation.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bain.
Yeah, I agree with the sentiments that are going around the table. And I'm supportive of Jamie's motion and Neville's and Norm's support of it. And to keep this thing going, I think what I would like to see happen, if I could just add to the sort of a friendly amendment to your motion, is that we do exactly what was said in Jamie, your words, let's pick a date. We should pick a date that fits with the local health order at the time, and do an actual town hall if we can and engage the public. But rather than have a big presentation, we should have a moderated conversation with the public. We don't want to have so much documentation and verbiage that we're trying to sell them on a project. We want to find what they want, not what we want to push through. And in fact, I don't think we as council are trying to push anything through. We want to respond to the constituents of our community. And I think if we listen to them, we're doing our job because we're their response representatives. Sorry. So with that in mind, I think we should, our next steps would be to pick that date. And I would suggest maybe council moderate this meeting, and so we don't put the burden on staff, and see where it goes and see what the people have to say to us and respond to that. Thank you.
Councillor Abbott, I'm going to ask you to close on this.
Okay, keep it brief. Yeah, as Councillor Bain was talking, something came to mind, this idea that council could do this and not staff. I think the question is relatively simple, and between us we can come up with it. And why don't we have a council initiative to create a have your say? I'll get it started and I'll kick it around all of us, and we can come up with a have you say and put it out there, and shouldn't take any of staff's time at all. The information is all in the 2050 plan. Just quote what's in the 2050 plan, ask the question, do some little bit of FAQs, because there are some people that are a little confused as to what urban containment is versus being part of Metro. I think it'd be really relatively simple to do, and I would offer to get it started.
I think where we left this was that Councillor Cunliffe asked that this topic be stricken. It was seconded. Councillor Bain suggested a friendly amendment.
I think Councillor Bain asked that the report not be received and not be part of the discussion. Well, I speak for yourself, Jamie, sorry.
Yeah, it was actually the report to be stricken, not the topic itself. And I do like where Fred and Neville are going with this. I think it's, I think they're on the right track here.
Okay, so if we, municipal coordinator, I mean, councillors are going in several directions here. So I'm trying to follow the string here.
Yeah, the report was presented as additional information when you made the amendment to the agenda. So you could just say that council not receive the additional information to whatever the item number is, 9A7, or sorry, 9A8. and that you set a date for, or that you put in motion some initiative for Have Your Say. That's what I've captured.
Thank you, Carla.
All right. If we can hold Carla's thought for a second. Peter, could you give your point of view for a minute, and then I'll call a motion, or I'll get this done appropriately.
Well, I don't have too much to say, other than the fact of the matter is that you can't change your designation to get out of the UCB unless you put forward an OCP amendment, and you have to have go through a process for that. And then after that, you have to do an amendment to the regional contact statement. The timelines for doing so, they won't accept an application until after they've dealt with 2050. Whether it happens in June or whether it gets delayed, that's still, I guess, a question for the board of Metro. But there is a process, and that was clarified by General Manager McNell when I spoke to her on Friday, in terms of the lack of clarity that was in one of her slides, which seemed to be presenting some confusion. So there's a process, has to be followed. You can have, it doesn't preclude having Have Your Say or town hall or anything else to discuss anything to do with the matter. Of course, those things can be done too, but eventually at some point you've got to enter into an OCP amendment process. And once that has at least gotten to second reading, then you can put forward an application. But at this point in time, they probably wouldn't accept it until after the adoption of Metro 2050. And by which time you're in the fall and the general election for municipalities in October.
There you go. If I may, before I go to Councillor Abbott, and I will conclude this discussion in a second. Being in the position I am, where I am a director for Metro. This is, I mean, to the canary in the mine shaft, as Councillor Berner said, is the wood burning devices. This is a climate action initiative. It's a climate action initiative that is dear to the hearts of the majority of the communities in Metro Vancouver. To suggest that we're going to go through all this work to put forward to go to rural, in my view, primarily to make it wood burning devices would be allowed, is, in my view, is probably not going to be well received by the Metro directors who vote on this. So all this work that's being done, a year out from now, when or plus a year out when it comes for a vote with the Metro directors, who, as the CAO has pointed out, may have changed over due to elections. It's I feel that the path that is going on here is accelerating, and there are many other items that that I believe are more important than this. And to have a significant amount of staff's time and our council energy put toward to it is misplaced. Councillor Abbott and then Councillor Cunliffe, if you could both be fairly tight in your comments, and then I will be going back to reading the suggestions that the municipal coordinator made.
Okay, I have just 2 points. Well, actually I had 1 point, and then Ron, you started speaking, so I have a second. I'll address yours first. In all honesty, I think you're one of the few people that still think this is just about burning my wood stove. I honestly do not believe that's what other residents are thinking about. It's about how we live, how we see ourselves, what else might come down the path if we consider ourselves urban, not rural. That's the discussion. As to, and I won't go any further because it could be a longer discussion. As to the CEO's comment on his conversation with Heather McNell on Friday. I had the same conversation with Heather McNell yesterday, and I asked her these questions. The answer is, if the board decides not to try complete the 2050 plan in this council term, which is what the goal was, and they may decide that in December. If they decide that in December, they're not going to try to complete it this term, we can then submit an amendment based on the 2040. If they do decide to go ahead and meet their timeline of June, we would only be able to submit after June. It's not that we have to wait for the 2050. The only reason we can't submit it based on the 2040 now is because it will be in readings. The new one will be in readings and you can't do it while it's in flux. So one way or the other, we can submit an application on this council term. Now, if June becomes July, then we have an issue that the answer might not come back to this council, but I think this council started this discussion and we should get it to some point of resolution. And I explained that to her and that was the answer. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cunliffe.
And I just wanted to say that I do think that you're oversimplifying this scenario based upon wood burning. I don't think that that is at the heart of why people responded to the petition. I think that it is a broader discussion. We weren't in the urban containment boundary historically. It's been a short period of time in the history of the village, and it needs to be revisited, and clearly residents want to revisit that, and I think that that's a platform we have to offer to them.
Your statement is simply wrong. We've been in the urban since day one. So we'll leave it at that. Just to conclude on this issue, Municipal Coordinator, could you refresh us with what appears to be the desired current moving forward direction?
Sorry, that council does not receive the additional information presented for item 9A7, and that council initiate a have your say to get feedback about the urban containment boundary.
Councillors, does somebody want to put that forward? Or actually, technically, Municipal Coordinator, we already, excuse me, we already have a motion that's there. Would this be considered a friendly amendment to that as a technicality? So yes, this is the current and only amendment that is being considered right now. So if somebody would like to put that forward, that's what we would go with.
I'll put it forward.
Thank you.
Or
I have a
James did, I'll second. We both spoke at the same time. You got a 1 and 2.
Councillor Cunliffe, you're a first or a second?
I'm happy either way, however Carla feels like typing.
Thank you very much. Is there any further discussion on this? All those in favor, all in favor of the motion, please confirm by saying yes. Those opposed by saying no.
Yes.
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 Carried.
Thank you. Vote.
Yes. Next piece, thank you very much, is the last Metro Climate Action Committee meeting that I attended. I gleaned this from the director's work plan, and it's here for information purposes only, but it shows where they are going with the wood burning devices initiative in terms of educating the public, and there's some, looks like there's some increased incentives for converting your equipment. So that's it for me. Next up, there are council reports and Council Abbott. I'm going to hand the floor to you for your recommendation.
Sorry, I was just slow on the unmute button there. given this need that we keep rushing along tonight, well, not rushing along, getting to some other matters, I'm happy not to do much of a presentation on this, and accept that people have read it, and that I'll just sort of jump to take some questions. But before I do that, I would just like to introduce the BaseSmart team members and thank them for their contribution in the meetings we've had over the last 3 months. And those are Amber Brown, Mandy Clark, John Yu, and Norma Rogers, who was instrumental in the original BaseSmart group, has since joined us for one meeting and stayed as part of the team. So I'd like to thank them. And then finally, I'd also like to thank Penny Nelson for putting some effort in producing the website. I hope everyone's had a chance to look at the website, a little bit under construction, and look at all the material. I know the workshop manager has responded back to Amber with some help and some suggestions on the various infographics that we intend to use. And I thank him for that. And then I'll just jump down to what the plan is. We're on a plan is to roll out on Friday village updates over the next 6 or so weeks. Some continued awareness on BaseSmart practices, focused on 2 things, launching this website and gathering more information on their movements in the village, as well as making people more aware of the issues in fall with the bears coming back through the village. And then the final ask is that we get some guidance from council as to whether they're comfortable with this group carrying on and doing this, or if there's any need to have a more formalized committee. I would like to say I think the group generally would like to keep going the way we are. They've got a lot done, and part of it's the fact that we can be fluid without a committee, formalized committee, although I think at some point next year we should formalize a committee so that the next council at least has something more formal. But right now, for this year and this imminent bear season, the fall season when the bears often come back to the village, I'd like to just keep going with this group. So that's where I'm at. We could read the recommendation. We'll probably take a few questions first.
Why don't you start with putting forward the recommendation, or comment that your recommendation is as recorded on the agenda?
It is as recorded on the agenda.
I would be very happy to second and go to discussion. And Councillor Bromere, your hand is up.
So unmute here. Thanks, Neville. I was wondering if you'd be open to something I had asked for before the summer break, which was some really simple graphics that we could blast out on the community Facebook page that speak to these issues. And I know that's a little bit of extra effort, but it could, really punchy graphics that we can just kind of blast out onto the website or onto the Facebook page might actually be a really quick way to get the message out.
Sure, Norm. So just to be clear, that most of this group came together through the Facebook page, and that's where they put their hand up and how we put the group together. The Facebook page and putting some infographics on it has always been the priority. The infographics that are attached to this report are the ones we intended to use. So every village update would have one infographic, and then that would then be posted on the Facebook page. That was the intention.
Yeah.
If you're suggesting those are still a little bit long and too cumbersome and think they can be shorter and punchier, I sort of take that under advisement, and maybe I can introduce you to Amber, but a lot of work has got to get to this point. So
it looks great. It looks
I'm not
great.
sure how many changes we can make now.
Yeah, no, yeah, sounds good. Thanks.
Okay.
I think it's fair to say kudos from all of your colleagues and your team members, Councillor Abbott. So if there's no other discussion on this, I will call a motion. which I am now. All those in favor of the recommendation put forward by Councillor Abbott, please confirm by saying yes. Those opposed, no.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
And
Thank
thank you very much for your hard work.
Councillor Abbott, I think you should advise your colleagues it's a resounding yes, and thank you very much.
I'll do that.
Thank you. Next piece is item D, which is the committees, and that is the tree application, which you can see on 113, page 113, tree application 113 on page 185 of your package. And the recommendation is that the Trees, Views and Landscape Committee recommends to council that council approves tree cutting permit application number 113, subject to the following, and that's 1 to 5 as recorded. I'll put forward that motion. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you. Any discussion on this particular one? There being none, I'll call the motion. All those in favor, please confirm by saying yes.
Yes,
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Next one, and this is the 50th anniversary committee meeting, and this is a technicality that was brought forward to me by the municipal coordinator. The quick skinny background is that the committee has gone about the year doing good, and one of those good deeds is selling 50th anniversary t-shirts, and they're charging over cost, so that the net difference is going to actually, I don't think it is the net proceeds. Yeah, no, it's full proceeds. The full proceeds are going to Lions Bay Fire and Rescue, and they've also sent the I guess the Arts Council sent this is separate from us. They don't receive any grants from us. They've sent us banner proceeds to the Fire and Rescue as well. So as a technicality, the municipal coordinators asked me to bring this to your attention. It's something the committee wants to do, and which the fire chief is a very happy recipient. And in fact, if you look at your last village update, he piggybacked off this. So the motion is that the 50th anniversary committee recommends to council that council approves the net proceeds from the sale of the 50th.
Not the net.
Pardon?
Not the
Didn't we
net,
just pay
just
her
the
back?
Oh,
proceeds.
sorry, the proceeds from the sale of the 50th anniversary shirts. And while the banner is not theirs, proceeds to the Lions Bay Fire Department.
Can I speak, after you say that, could I speak to it?
Yes, please.
Well, I just wanted to clarify about the proceeds. The invoices were submitted for the t-shirts, which were $2,700. So, which was paid by the 50th anniversary and is in their budget, but I just actually got a copy of their budget and there is no revenue showing. So I assumed it was going to be gross proceeds, which I confirmed with Uta Phillips. But then subsequent to that, I saw their minutes would actually say net proceeds. So I would ask, I haven't heard back from her to clarify its gross proceeds. So I would ask yourself and Councillor Cunliffe, who are both members of the 50th committee, if they know, because the minutes did say net proceeds. So basically the question is, are they absorbing the $2,700 of costs and taking all proceeds to the fire department, or is it the net proceeds? My understanding from Ms. Phillips is it was gross proceeds, but it was the minutes that threw me when I saw the minutes.
I'm going to strongly suggest it's the gross proceeds.
It's important we get the resolution right.
So which the resolution, as I mentioned, is the accurate one.
It says net proceeds, so we have to alter the
So
resolution.
I've read proceeds,
Yes.
not net. Thank you. So I think that clarifies. Did I get a seconder, municipal coordinator? I don't think so.
Not yet.
Can I have a seconder for that? There is Councillor Burmeyer. Any discussion on this? There being none.
I'm sorry, I was in their meeting as well, and they definitely spoke about net proceeds.
All right.
And I always understood it to be net.
Well, I tell you what, we're either going to be right or we're going to be wrong. So I think we'll just be tabling it. And their next meeting is, if that's fine with everybody else,
Okay, presentation for next meeting, okay.
Okay, but the committee is having their next meeting. That being said, with council's let me pose a question to the municipal coordinator. The 50th committee has paid for some upgrades to the trophy for the fishing derby. And I think they're contributing something smallish for a junior fishing participant if they catch something. But all other funds raised by the subcommittee for this event, their intention was that proceeds would go to the fire department.
That was my understanding, net of the prize. There was a first prize that they would be paying for. But did it occur on September 11th? We weren't sure. Has it been rescheduled?
Yes, yes, I participated,
Oh, it did, okay.
but I didn't win. I think I might have caught the smallest fish of the day, but at least I caught one.
There you go. Well, and there you go. So I'll seek advice here. I mean, we can do this after the fact, and we can get this finalized after the next 50th committee. Okay, so then my recommendation to my colleagues is just so that our I's are dotted and T's crossed, is that we'll table this for the time being, table it during the discussion, finalize it at the next council meeting, and I'll bring forward the particulars for the Derby proceeds too. And, you know, I don't feel bad about this because this is what happens when you have different dates for committee meetings and council meetings. They aren't necessarily in sync. Okay, so that's being tabled. Thank you, Municipal Coordinator, for your advice and your diligence on this one. Item number 3, and this is Councillor Barmere with an update on the Climate Action Committee.
Yeah, so a verbal update on some of the salient points of the last Climate Action Committee meeting. One of the things that's going to come forward is an amendment or a recommendation to amend policy 2002 purchasing policy to make it green, more green, more sustainable. So that's coming from the Climate Action Committee for the October 5th meeting. The other thing coming from the Climate Action Committee is a recommendation for the Council's strategic planning session, be a formal recommendation coming forward on October 5th. One of the things that was outstanding was a request the CAC had made to staff for an inventory of municipal internal combustion engine equipment. I was wondering if we could just please have an inventory of that equipment. The last piece was a question from the Climate Action Committee about the Green and Inclusive Community Buildings Program and whether staff had an opportunity to look at that or whether there's any opportunities for us to take advantage of that grant. And the 2 other current projects, the Clat Building and the up and coming beach renovation project, the Climate Action Committee is curious about whether any sustainable building and purchasing principles will be applied to those projects. And we'll be looking for from a more formal report to council for the October 5th meeting.
So the question, would the request from staff then come in that report at the next meeting?
It's an outstanding request. So the internal combustion engine inventory is that's an older request. And the Green and Inclusive Community Buildings Program is also something we brought up a while back. We're just curious if there's any progress on that, or if staff had looked at whether there's any project that could potentially benefit from that grant, like for example, the oil furnace in the community hall, you know, for just as an example.
No, sorry, I don't actually remember it coming to council. So that's my mistake. I know it was discussed at the CIC, but I didn't realize the request had been made. So the answer would be no. So we'll have to look at that.
Yeah, thanks, Pam. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Anything else, Councillor Barmere from the CAC, or are you good?
Yeah, that's it.
Thank you very much. Moving along to item E, we've got 2 emergency service reports. The first is the July and August RCMP reports. I'll put forward the motion to receive that. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you. Any questions? There being none, call the motion. All those in favor of receiving the RCMP report? Confirm with yes. Thank you. We're good. Also, we have the Lions Bay Fire Rescue Dispatch Monthly Report. I'll put forward that recommendation for receipt of this item too. I have a second for that. Okay, thank you. Any discussion, any comments? There being none, call a motion. All in favor that the item be received, please confirm by saying yes or raise your hand or no.
Yes.
Thank you very much, everybody. Which brings us to resolutions, which there are none, and bylaws, which there are none, and correspondence, which starts on page 211. And I offer to do this for Councillor Cunliffe. Thank you for keeping me sharp, Councillor Cunliffe, and you have one more month to do.
And thank you.
Thank you very much. So we have two sets of correspondence. The outside one, which is items, the various items which range from page 1 to 39. And as I've done in the past, unless somebody's pulling this out, one of these items out, I will mark these all as received with council's blessing. So if you'd like to pull one out and state your reason why, then we'll go. Otherwise, I'll acknowledge it's received. Okay, thank you.
Right. Yeah, I would just like to draw people's attention to the first item, very pertinent to the discussion we had earlier, and I hope everyone's read that and gone through it.
Thank you very much.
2050, about the request for the 2050 plan feedback.
Well, I personally got my autographed copy asking for questions. So I'm thinking about it. And I guess everybody's, let's just make sure. I'm not sure whether Metro sent it to everybody or just to you and to, I got the hard copy.
I sent it to you and council and uncopied Peter and staff. But this is the 25th of November deadline, and I think we need to focus on that.
Just this, thank you very much, Councillor Abbott. As a reminder, the municipal coordinator, can I get you to resend that to the council members? Okay, and I would suggest that given the earlier topics that everybody have a look at that. Thank you very much.
Can I just say one, I don't see it here on the list, but we received a request about the groundwater, bottling our groundwater. I think it came in after the package was maybe put together, but if we could look at a date, I'll look at that. And if there is a date that we need to respond to, I would be in favor of backing that, but I don't see it here.
I think on behalf of all of us, unless there's someone who disagrees, Councillor Cunliffe, you have our faith to do good, and so go forward and do so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just, sorry. Can I just mention G12? I just say kudos to our staff for keeping our water drinking as well as it is. I mean, we've got the evidence here from Vancouver Coastal Health that looks like a pretty clean record as far as I can see. So well done.
Thank you very much. Resident correspondence. And there are two here. One is from resident Dino, and the other one is from the third one, which is resident Goding. And this is their view on the highway situation. And this is after one of the, while I was at sea, I believe one of two crashes that recently occurred. And I would seek the CAO's guidance. The first one for making recommendations on blinking things and bumps. And so that's a MODI contact. On the other one, I think Mr. Kodig is basically asking for greater RCMP coverage, or I don't think he's asking to go duke it out with the minister on radar. What would your suggested response be within the staff have the contacts with MODI on the first one with bumps and blinks? Is this something you would bring up with them?
Well, I don't think that the Ministry of Transportation would ever consider speed bumps on Highway 99.
Okay,
I think that in both cases, for the reasons that have been stated quite eloquently by former Mayor Burr, that the average speed over distance concept is something that hopefully one day the ministry will come around to seeing the wisdom of giving it a try at the very least. But RCMP resources to our area are sporadic. Sometimes we've got lots of coverage and lots of tickets get issued, but then there are other times when they don't have the resources and we don't see much of a presence.
okay. I will offer to write back to both Mr. Dino and Mr. Goding on Resident Luthi on Remembrance Day. I've been behind the scenes working with this. Short of health restrictions, there will be an event. The early thinking is it will be not dissimilar to last year where it was an outside event. I'm going to come back to you, Councillor Abbott. But that still is a work in progress, but we're also looking for succession from previous leadership. Councillor Abbott?
Yeah, I was wondering when I read those earlier about the idea of speed bumps. So, speed bumps are not going to happen on a highway. That just doesn't make sense, especially kill a lot of motorcyclists probably. But what about sort of noise producers like rumble strips, like the shallow ones where they just put those like checkered pattern on and you get something that draws your attention to you coming? Would that be feasible?
Well, anything, I guess, can be done. There are places where there are rumble strips, but I wonder if they'd be, counterintuitive for those residents who are adjacent to the highway and listening to the highway noise. People might slow down, but you're going to be hearing them go over the rumble strip. So I'm not sure that much would be achieved.
Good point. This is not so much about noise, but this is about people dying though. So, okay.
Yep. Thank you very much. The next item is from Mayor Burr and his comments on signage. I think he's just giving his point of view, and I would suggest that we mark this as received. Unless there's any discussion to the contrary. I'll take that as a no, thank you. The last one is from Mr. Reuter, and I think we're familiar with his, and I think his objective has been achieved this evening. Councillor Abbott, as a formality, why don't you write back?
Okay.
Thank you very much. And that concludes the correspondence section. New business being none. And here we come to that time of the evening where it is the gallery is open to us and for 10 minutes, 2 minutes of the topic that's been discussed. So I'd open the gallery up. If you could come in now and unmute and participate or not, otherwise we'll move to close out the meeting. Okay, thank you, gallery, for attending this evening. We will conclude the public portion of the meeting and move back into close. So we'll say goodnight to the gallery for the council members and for staff. You don't have to go to another site. We'll clear the room virtually. And while we're doing that, why don't we take a couple-minute break?
Perfect.
So you can sign off and then do what you do.